Well, hello everyone. This is Al Fadi, and I want to welcome you back to this particular video series on the possible origin of the Quran. We called it the Aramaic Quran. Today, we are going to talk about the notion or the belief that the Quran is perfectly preserved book, something I grew up believing in all of my life, and obviously every Muslim adheres to this doctrine of preservation. However, the question is, do we truly have 100% preserved Quran today that matches the original Quran? And to unpack this question with us, here in studio, our dear brother, Dr. Jay Smith. So,
Yeah.
Jay, you've been in Speaker Corners for many, many years. You probably heard this claim over and over again. The Quran we have in our heart today is the exact replica of the Quran that existed from day one. In fact, last time we watched even a video where Mansour Ahmed said exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and this is, they have to say it. They really have no other choice. And the reason why is the Quran says that. And let's just open up. I have here the Quran, chapter 15, verse 9, and this is what it says. Verily, we it is who have sent down the dhikr, that is the Quran, and surely we will guard it. Surely we will guard it. What does that say to you? What does that suggest to you?
Oh, I mean, on the surface, this verse applies to the Quran. Obviously, you can make an argument that the dhikr applies also to the Torah, but nevertheless, this means the Quran has been preserved by Allah.
Yeah, and the Quran continues, and it says, and this is chapter 10, verse 15 in the Quran. It says this, and when our clear verses are recited to them, those who hope not for their meeting with us say, bring us a Quran other than this, or change it. Say, it is not for me to change it on my own accord. I only follow that which is revealed. So you're not permitted to change it. Now, Dr. Yasser Qadi and others like Shabir Ali, Dr. Shabir Ali would say, not even one word, not even one letter. So they would go even beyond that and say that. But let's go down to chapter 18, verse 27, which continue, and recite what has been revealed to you of the book of your Lord. None can change his words, and none will find as a refuge other than him. None can change his words. So nobody can change his words.
That's right.
In chapter 15, verse 9, why? Because Allah guards it. So it's very clear that it's not that they're making this up, not that they are saying, listen, we want to have a better book than you have. The Quran itself makes that
Right,
claim.
complete faith in the words of the Quran.
They have to do so.
Yeah.
So what have we found? Well, we are asking this question, and we've been going through this question for years now, and we're saying, okay, so you claim not one word, not one letter has been changed. Is this true? Well, we've already looked, and we've seen in our earlier episodes where there's a problem when you look at Al-Bukhari, chapter 6, verse 509 and 510, that there are two different Qurans between 632 and 652. In that 20-year period, according to Al-Bukhari, that you obviously have two different Qurans. Why? Because Uthman says to Zayd ibn Thabit, if you find any differences, make sure you do it in the Qurayshi dialect.
That's right.
The assumption is there's going to be a difference between what you're looking
true,
at from
and it's in
Hafsa.
different dialects.
It's in different dialects.
Right.
What's more, in that same hadith, it says later on in that same hadith that he had to burn those that were different. He had to burn them. All the other ones that were different, way up in Azerbaijan, I'm sorry, not Azerbaijan, but at the Battle of Azerbaijan, there in Iraq, there in Basra, there in Kufa, there in Damascus, that Udaifa found were different. They had to then burn all those, and that happened in 652. So already you see, in 652, you have difference between the 632 and the 652, and also enough so that they had to burn it. And otherwise, if there were no differences, why would you need to send 5 copies to 5 cities? As the model or the paradigm for all of their Qurans, unless, of course, there were others.
Right.
So that's in 652. Then we know that there were, by the 8th century, we start getting these guys. And I just want to pull these up. Then you start getting these. We're going to talk about these a little later. But these are the different Qira'ats. So this is the Hafs over here, and this is the Warsh. The two most famous today. They're the two most popular today. So you start getting lots of dots and vowels put to it, and you get to starting to get different Qurans. Are these the same Quran?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, of course.
It's not really $1 million. It doesn't cost very much to find out the difference, because
that's right.
Our team in Australia, has done a comparison between these two books, and guess what they have found?
I mean, well, I'm sure they found, what, 5,000 you said?
5,000.
5,000 different stuff. I mean, you don't even have to have a team. To be honest with you, Ash-Shatibi did an excellent job for you. There is a color-coded one that you can look at the differences between Hafs and Warsh. So to answer your question as an Arab speaker, you cannot tell me if you have a word was said one way and a word was said another way, you're looking at the same copy. It's just impossible. It's illogical to make a claim like that.
Okay. In 936, you have a guy named Ibn Mujahid. He chose 7. Why would he have to choose 7 if there's only one Quran?
Well, I think we did a show on that. Was it popularity, I believe?
It has to do with popularity. But hold on a minute. Yeah. If there's just one Quran, why do you even have 7? Obviously, it's 7. That means there's 7 different ones. And your family would choose one. You'll probably choose Ibn Kasai. And yet another family would have chosen Ibn Kathir. And another child would, well, hold on a minute. Notice all the first 7 don't even include Hafs or Warsh. These 2 right here.
Right. These are transmitters, basically. Yeah.
These are actually Qira'at. These are actually the original ones in 936, chosen by Ibn Mujahid. But then, look at the date, 1194, you have Al-Shatibi that you just referred to. And he chose 14, another 14 above and beyond this first 7. And that's where these 2 come into play, because these were chosen in the end of the 12th century by Al-Shatibi. Why did he have to choose these 14? Why wasn't he satisfied with the first 7?
I mean, that's what you see, by the way. There is progressive development and embellishment, So you have 14 readers, right? You cannot say, it is the number 14. So you have 14 readers. Are they all reading the same way? I would accept it if they're all reading the same way. The answer is no.
The fact that you have to choose 14 means that they're different.
Right.
And the way your family is going to memorize it is different than the other family. Otherwise, and that's why you make sure that your tradition and your village and your tribe, you memorize it the same way they have for generations, for 1,400 years, or in this case, 12 or 1,100 years. But hold on a minute, that was 14 on plus the 7. How many do you have now? 14 plus 7 equals 21.
That's right.
Was that good enough?
Not yet. You still have 3 more plus an additional 6.
6 by Al-Jazari. Al-Jazari, and look at the date. Here's the date, 1429.
Right.
In 1429, so you're talking about the 5th century, the beginning of the
15th century.
15th century. Did I say 5th century?
Yeah.
The beginning of the 15th century, 1429, you have another 3 Qira'at and another 6.
And Muhammad died
of the riwayats
in the 7th century.
So that's 800 years later.
So do the math.
800 years later.
And don't tell me it was preserved orally, as Mansour Ahmed mentioned, orally, and you caught on that. Orally transmitted. I mean, if it is orally transmitted perfectly, then why do we have this money?
Why were these 7 plus 14 plus 3 plus 6, how many you get? 30. 30 official Qur'ans by the 15th century. By the time you get to that, now we have 15 different Qur'ans. How many differences are there? Well, see, ask a Muslim that, and they won't be able to tell you. But our team in London was able to find out. You know how many differences they came up with, just those 30?
90-some thousand?
93,000. You're right.
Yeah.
93,000 differences.
Yeah.
Now, were you taught that when you were growing up?
Of course not. By the way, to let people know that you and I are going through a series that we will continue to do, which is capitalizing on the differences just between these 2. We're calling it 2 Qur'ans, just to let people know.
2 Qur'ans. And that's just the Hafs. That's just these 2 right here.
Hafs and Warsh.
And the reason we're using these 2 is because the Hafs, this one here, is the most popular. 95% of the people in the world today now use this one. Why? Where did this one come from? Well, that happened in 1924.
Started it at least in 1924. Then it was corrected again.
7 times it was corrected. By 1936. By 1936, they had corrected it 7 different times because they had found error after error after error. And that by 1936, they finally introduced a new Hafs, but it's still Hafs.
Right.
They new Hafs, which was being used all over Egypt, became so successful that by 1985, you're right, the Saudi Arabians, they finally said this is the official Quran, which is fascinating because where does this Quran come from? Does it come from Saudi Arabia?
Most of the time. I mean, you're going to see that it's printed in Medina.
No, I mean the original one, Hafs.
Oh, it was a Cairo one?
No.
Oh, you're talking about where Hafs it's himself? No, of course, Hafs wasn't from Saudi. It was
from Kufa.
In Iraq, yeah.
He is from Iraq. Yeah. He is from Kufa. Yeah. And this is what's fascinating. Most people don't even know this. He died in 796. Muhammad died in 632.
300 years plus.
That's 146 years later. You have this guy writing this Quran that is different than the one that is in 632. 146 years later, and no one's bothered to question that. So when the Saudi Arabian government finally chose this as the standard text, why didn't they choose Ibn Kathir's? Why did
Which
they
is,
choose someone from Saudi Arabia?
Mecca, by the way. You're right. Ibn Kathir, basically a reader from Mecca, technically
Now
speaking.
remember, this is not the Ibn Kathir,
Right. That's not
tafsir.
the tafsir guy. That's another one.
That's much, much later. That's about 500 years later. This is a guy from the 8th century, 730s, that he actually wrote his. But this guy wrote this in the late 8th century, 796, just coming into the 8th century. And this is the one that was chosen. And this was chosen by Al-Haddad, Muhammad Al-Husayni Al-Haddad, there at Al-Azhar University in 1924. Why did he choose this one? He chose this one because the Ottomans had chose this one.
Right.
And the Ottomans were the ones that had all the manuscripts.
And you would expect, I mean, logically again, that these two could have been a Mecca reader and a Medina reader. It makes sense, right? Because that's the traditional story, Mecca, Medina. But we're not finding that. In fact, the Mecca and Medina one were discounted, actually.
Now remember, what were the ones that Uthman had burned?
Well, he burned the ones in his area, most likely Medina, Mecca, maybe.
No, he preserved those. He burned the ones that Udaifa found were different. The other ones were from Iraq and Damascus. Those are the ones he burned. He should have been burning. This is the one he would have been burning.
Well, I mean, did you really believe the burning process was successful?
Can you see? We're finding hole after hole after hole.
Right, yeah.
We're just destroying the tradition. And everything we've been talking about in this segment for the last 10 minutes, have you noticed? Everything is coming straight out of their traditions. We're not making any of this up. We're just asking questions. We're putting the sift. We're sifting all what they're saying. And we're saying, hold on, there are a lot of problems. There are a lot of holes that are coming out of this sieve. And what you're finding is, if once you start questioning, these are nothing more than academic questions. We're asking textual questions. If the Muslims are going to claim that there's one Quran that has been preserved, not one word, not one letter, then what are they going to do with just these two that have 5,000 differences? And what are they going to do with the 30 that were chosen that had 93,000 differences? Can you see the dilemma for the high school teachers there in Cairo, one city, Cairo, in 1924, when they were having students coming with 30 different answers for every one of those Quranic references, 30 different answers? They had a dilemma, because how do you standardize tests? That's why they went to Muhammad ibn al-Husayni al-Haddad to find just one. And he chose the one the Ottomans chose. This was a political statement. Right. He was chosen the ones of the Ottomans who still were in control in 1924. They were still in control of the Quran. They had chosen this one since the 1299s, because the reason why they chose the Hafs one, which is this one here, is because it was the closest to where they came from and it was the easiest. It was, again, a political decision. Did any of the Ottomans, did Ibn al-Husayni al-Haddad, did he even open the text? Did Ibn Mujahid open the text to read it? Did al-Shatibi open the text to read it? Did al-Jazari open the text to read it? Not one of them opened the text to read it to see if they conformed with that which had come earlier, because they had nothing to go to what had come earlier, because there was no manuscript for them to go to. There was no Uthmanic manuscript. Right. Therefore, what did they do? They chose, as you said a little earlier, they chose those that had the most students. Those who had the largest number of students. It had all to do with popularity. It had nothing to do with textual criticism. Can you see, when they talk about preservation, we're going to ask these kinds of questions. Now, can you see the dilemma in June 8, 2020, when Muhammad Hijab put his hand out and he says, we've got a problem here. Which is the Quran you're going to put here? Remember what?
Yes.
What did Al-Qadi say? He
Holes
said,
in the narrative.
You do not ask me this question in public. Please don't ask me this question. This has been the most difficult problem for the last 1,000 years for Muslim scholars. In fact, you, Hijab, you in the East, your narrative has holes in it. Exactly. There are holes in the narratives. That's why we call it the standard Islamic narrative. Quoting Yasir Qadi, there are all kinds of holes in the narrative. Here's another one. I'm just giving you number after number. We're talking about the first two Qur'ans. We're talking about the 5 manuscripts that were sent to the 5 different cities. We're talking about the 30 different Qira'ats, which are chosen in 936, in 1194, and 1424. And we're talking about finding the one that was chosen in 1924 by Al-Haddad. That became the standard. This is it right here. Can you then see there is no preservation? Looks like the Quran has not been served one iota.
Absolutely. And it's logical, really. The questions we're asking demands really an answer by logically process these questions. Ask yourself, how can you claim that you have an exact copy of a Quran that is 1400 years old, when in fact the same tradition that you're relying on tells you that there are different Qur'ans, different readings. Now, I know people argue about what does it mean to read it this way or rather. It is still different. That's the point. And we will show you in one of these future episodes what we mean by different readings sometimes of the same word, depending on the dotting, depending on the vowel markings, and so on and so forth. Until we meet again next time, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, CIRA International, and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.